Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. What a week it was. Today is March the 9th, 2018. Strong hand, long-term thinking, unconfiscatable. Remember all three of those things. Those just aren't sayings, people. Those are things to apply to what has just happened this week in Bitcoin with all the FUD, all the people trying to scare you out of your Bitcoin. Anyway, this week in Bitcoin, I'm in South Africa. You don't see me because there have been technical difficulties. I'm scared it's going to kick me off. But we have three very special guests. And you guys know these dudes for various reasons. Giuseppe Studo, he's back. He's been on the show before. Chris Bleck, well, that's basically his name. I don't know what he wants to. Chris is on the show. He's got his awesome Twitter. He's back on. And Andrew from Crypto Sense, he's coming in from England. He's got an awesome channel. I've mentioned him before on the show. He hasn't been on the show before. So we're going to start it off with Chris, actually. And he's got New York City is right behind his, Manhattan's right behind his shoulder. When he starts talking, yeah. I think you guys can see it.
I'll just stay like this the whole time.
Yeah, stay like that the whole time.
Yeah.
This week ended basically with wild news stories that crashed the Bitcoin market and the cryptocurrency market. And as all of you know, I tell you to ignore the price. But, once like the Binance supposed hack came out, and then the SEC story and the Japanese story came out, and the Mt. Gox story came out, everyone starts screaming about all four of them and that the price is going to go down to 6,000. They don't have long-term thinking. And, I have said this on my previous shows. We've been through this 1,000 times. How many more times do we have to be through this scenario where there's a lot of stories all at once, everybody panics? Chris, what's your opinion? Were any of these four stories legit? I mean, they were real stories at times, but what's your take on it?
It's all real information, right? The question is it enough that should warrant the drop that we're seeing? And crash is like kind of a bit of a strong word, right? It's a price dip. We've seen these price dips over and over. But what's become really apparent to me is when you hear about what's going on, the stories, the Mt. Gox dude, all these things, they're just kind of sparking. They're dropping a spark into the pile of hay, right? And then the flames that shoot up, which is the price dropping, is all the panic selling that comes after. So, they kind of spark it, and then we have the panic selling, which shows that there's still a huge number of people, nice shirt, huge number of people that are in this space that don't really understand what's going on. Everybody's showing their boob. But look, for me, it's now much less important how high we go. It's much more important to me where our bottom is. And every time we have these alleged crashes, they're at a higher and higher level, right? So last time it was 6,000. Yep. This time I'm hoping it's right around where we are right now, which I think is the high 8s. If the next crash, we go down to as low as 9,500, a year from now, our basement could be, we could be talking about a basement of $20,000. So, that's the way I'm looking at it. Every time we have a crash, we come out at a higher spot and it just keeps on laddering up. So I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, you got a lot to say here. Hey, everyone, this is what I look like. This is the only time you're going to see me this show. Well, maybe. Andrew, what's going on with you with this? You're nodding your head.
No, I completely agree. I mean, for me, what people seem to be forgetting is that we're much higher levels than we were just a couple of months ago. People seem to think that exponential growth is normal across markets, but you won't find any other markets which move like Bitcoin. And to be making a lot of these comparisons is silly, in my opinion. I think that these kinds of events show the fallibility of technical analysis. I think there is weight in technical analysis. It's a useful tool when the markets are behaving naturally without any of these cataclysmic events, which we've been seeing over this week, to be honest. Binance and the Mt. Gox trustees doing what they're doing. So yeah, this is what it's showing to me. As Chris said, like the floor is, moving up, and it just shows that the stronger hands are staying exactly where they should be.
Do you think any of these stories is more important than the other? The FUD stories. You used the word. Did you use the word catastrophic? What did you? Cataclysmic. I wouldn't go that far. But do you think? Because again, I mean, and you make a great point about technical analysis. I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to even be a trader. These things happen. These type of stories are always going to happen, and they always cause tremendous drops. And again, if you're a long-term thinker, then it doesn't even matter. But if you're one of these trader dudes, you're going to get hit hard if you're just doing this technical analysis. But Andrew, do any of the stories stick out in your head? Were any more important than the other?
For me personally, I think the Mt. Gox trustees selling off their Bitcoin and their altcoins that they've got, their Bcash, that was quite a big thing for me because I've seen pictures of wallet addresses when they were selling, and you see big drops on the day that these alleged, I don't know if it's alleged or it's been proved or what, but you see big drops on the days that these wallets made their transactions. I don't think, for me that stands out. The Binance story stands out, but I think it's all compounding. I don't think there's any one particular story which will cause something, so major. It all compounds.
Giuseppe, what do you think about this? And specifically, what do you think about the Mt. Gox trustee? Just why did he decide to sell it on the exchanges instead of to go over the counter? Is this guy a fool? I mean, what's going on there? I thought you might have an opinion on that, but tell us your opinion on everything.
Sure. Well, to answer that question directly, I really don't have an opinion because that's just pure speculation. I think we could think of a million reasons why or why not he or she would have wanted to do that. But with regard to the stories, how they're impactful and what matters, I think this is a lot of positivity. I think that with Japan, for example, that proves that regulators are now confident that people are trusting these virtual assets. And I think it's the job of regulators to make sure now that they set frameworks up, both short-term and long-term, to ensure a healthy environment for their people, their citizens and their residents to be able to entrust these digital assets for long-term store value purposes or whatever else. I mean, I don't see the negativity. I really don't. I can see why people think it's negative, but genuinely speaking, it did not even cross my mind. That was a checkbox. Great. Another big worldwide economy now thinks that this is a real long-term asset. Beautiful. With regards to the U.S. piece, same thing, same aforementioned thoughts. I think that it's actually just not surprising at all. That's what is going to continue to happen, and I think it's also healthy, positive signals. On the Binance piece in particular, I think that showcases how strong of a technical team they are. I mean, I think that that's another positive too. These things are going to happen, and they handled it as professionally as any other exchange outside of cryptocurrency would have, if not better, because they're all technologists. And then with the Mt. Gox stuff, I think once again that's just it's unfortunate that it happened at this point, but I think it was going to happen sooner or later, right? But those are my thoughts.
Now, see, all four of these stories, I mean, they came out within 24 hours of each other. Do you think there are certain people out there, whether they're traders or just people with no lives, that just love to compound this stuff and exaggerate it and scare people and create FUD situations?
I just want to make a point, actually, which kind of chimes in with Giuseppe's, and that he's absolutely right. There are so many good things going on right now within the Bitcoin space, but it's only these bad stories which are brought out and brought to the front and are kind of held at the front and shoved down your throat, which is fine because it does shake out the weak hands. It's good for people like us who are accumulating. So,
But yeah, well, the question is, so going back to Giuseppe there, what do you think that it is that there are entities that are twisting the good news and the bad news, or just taking all of the bad news and trying to scare people? I mean, because we've been through, it seems like this happens all the time, where where it's exaggerated, with a story where people take it to the next level. And it doesn't just, to me, it seems like, of course, the media is going to look at, is going to try their best to make things look bad and scare people. But now it seems like there are just people that want to get Bitcoin for cheap. I mean, it almost seems like that. Just have
sure. I mean, I think with any market, and crypto, the cryptocurrency market is no different. There's going to be good actors and bad actors. And each side of the coin and each side of these actors are going to have their own hidden agendas and ulterior motives. And this is no different. I think it's one of those things where it's expected. And I think that people that truthfully actually understand the market itself with specific regard to cryptocurrency in this scenario know that, you know, you have to filter out these ulterior motives and hidden agendas. But sure, there definitely are actors, both of good intention and bad intention, that are going to be using these motives for self-serving purposes.
Before we get to Chris here, I just wanted to thank Craig in the super chat, the great Craig Ship, who is at an undisclosed location in near Camp David. He sent $2. He says, have a strong hand. Thank you for that super chat. And everybody, use that strong hand right now to pound that like button. Remember to subscribe to this channel. Check out the notes section below, because you can read all about these dudes. You check out their Twitter. You check out their sites. These are 3 smart dudes. Chris, I didn't ask you if you thought any of the 4 stories was more important than the others. And do you have any replies to what the guys have been saying as we've kind of expanded upon things?
No, it's been all great comments. I do think that the Mt. Gox story is the most important story out of the 4, because for me, it's there's a silver lining to the cloud, right? Because there are whales like this out there. There's not just Mt. Gox, but there's individuals still that have a whole lot of Bitcoin. And the more that we can get them to reduce their stack and disseminate it on the exchanges, the less volatility we're going to see. One person shouldn't be able to influence the market the way that he has. And that's just a sort of leftover remnant from the early days of Bitcoin when prices were low and they could accumulate that much. So we are still in the early days where this is going to happen for a little while longer. And there's still a lot of situations where people have a ton of Bitcoin. They might need to, buy their $1 billion jet sometime in the next year or two. So they're going to liquidate, and we're going to see movements. But this is going to be, 10 years from now, this is not going to be an issue ever again, right? Because, all of the Bitcoin is going to be spread out among the world. So it's going to be a completely different story.
Yeah, there won't be silly big entities like that are just dumping every month or whatever this dude is doing. But I do want to point out again, I'm a guy who doesn't really care that much about price, because I'm just trying to get more Bitcoin. I still have the same amount of Bitcoin that I had yesterday. But one thing that you have to take note of is not only did the Bitcoin price drop, and that's what the big news is, but every single cryptocurrency price dropped in terms of dollars, every single one. And it's because of Bitcoin stories. So in that positive note for Bitcoin, Bitcoin still is the king.
It makes me laugh, because I was watching it was a TA analysis show, and he was going, oh look, Bitcoin's dropped 10%. Oh, Litecoin's dropped 10%. Oh, everything's dropped 10%. But he's looking at it in the dollar value. And obviously, because these people don't realize that it is literally tied to the Bitcoin price. It's not kind of, or like it looks like it's it literally is tied. A lot of people just don't get this. And I've got friends, and whatever, they say, oh, I've made this many pounds over here, and you look at them and say, yeah, but how much Bitcoin have you made? And that just doesn't cross their mind.
It's more so how much Bitcoin have they lost by not holding Bitcoin? I mean, these people that ask me about Litecoin all the time, there have been times when Litecoin's gone up in dollar price, but in terms of Bitcoin, it hadn't. I mean, you got to value your wealth in Bitcoin. With that, do you guys have any comments on that before we move on here?
Just one more thing. I have seen over the past few days with this drop, we have seen a lot of drops, not just in dollars, but in Satoshis, and from Ethereum on down, we are seeing Satoshi level drops as well. So Bitcoin is clearly driving the sentiment of the market, but it's the lack of knowledge within the entire market that's causing people to also flip out of altcoins and back into Bitcoin at the same time. And that's my opinion of what's probably happening when we see the Satoshi drops.
Well, Bitcoin dominance has gone up a little bit during all of this, I think, too.
Yeah. Right.
And you say lack of knowledge for those people. It's a very nice way of putting it. Very, very kind.
Underinformed.
Yeah. That's to say the least. I am still running into people who are into these altcoins and ICOs who they keep all their coins on exchanges. They don't really even know how to send or some of these. I mean, you hear the wackiest stories. You won't even believe some of the. I sent my Ethereum to an Ethereum Classic address. Why didn't that work? Why can't I get? I mean, just and there's nothing wrong with that in the sense that they just didn't learn. You guys are skipping important steps out there. I've said this many times. Just take your time when learning about cryptocurrency, people. And a little bit of more of a complex matter that deals with cryptocurrency and crypto dividends. Let's talk about the Bprivate fork. And then this was a big story at the beginning of the week. There was drama around Bittrex, and there was a lot of worry. But it seems like now the sentiment is back on the Bprivate side. Giuseppe, what do you have for us from the land of Bprivate? What do you have to say? What's going on?
I think that we are 1 week into the mainnet launch. The blockchain launched successfully. It was put together in a very short period of time. And considering the circumstances, it was a technical success. I think that if you talk to technologists and tell them everything that we pulled off from a mainnet standpoint, I think they would agree that it was not a simple / easy feat. I think that our challenges and obstacles are pretty clear because let's take a step back. The mission of Bitcoin Private is to bring the best privacy technology, so zero knowledge proofs, to a mainstream audience. I think if you look at the data of traction of privacy coins in general, there's no transactions has been brought to a mainstream audience. So that's where we think we can differentiate. And that's what we plan on doing. And I think we have our work cut out. We need to make it more accessible via exchanges, and we need to execute on our product strategy and get our vendor product out there, and also continue to innovate on the blockchain level too.
Well, I got to tell you, privacy is people are saying that's going to be the next big thing. So the Bprivate people are definitely onto something here. It's giving Bitcoin holders their own version of Zcash is a good way of putting it, I guess. Any other developments that people should know about or ways to contact or just to get up to date information? Anything you want to say about it? Because so many people are curious. They do have so many questions.
We are rolling out frequent community updates. So I wrote the first one that we published this past Tuesday. I think what we want to do is get into a frequent, predictable cadence with updating our community. So stay tuned on our Twitter account. We'll be shooting out any Medium articles that we publish on our strategy. Now that we kind of have a longer term strategy, we're going to be updating everyone on our exchange progress. One thing that's been happening that's pretty exciting this week, we've had vendors mainly from the US, but throughout the world, have come to us unsolicited inbound asking how they can take Bitcoin private for their business transactions. And that's really cool. That shows us that at least, in just a short period of time, there's the appeal is there. And stay tuned for, our product updates on the vendor side. We're going to be putting together a really nice user experience. We're rolling out a new ambassador program next week. And I think we're going to be innovating a ton, both on the technical side and also on the community side.
Yeah, I would just say anyone who's into crypto dividends and the Bitcoin, be patient. Be patient. Be a long-term thinker. We're all in the middle of a big experiment here. We can't rush things too much. If you rush things, you're going to make a tremendous mistake. And it just hold on to your coins, people. Andrew, I think you've been covering the Bprivate situation. Do you have any comments, any thoughts on what's been going on, or any questions for Giuseppe or anything?
I mean, I think the Bprivate, it's well timed. There's obviously a lot of interest in privacy coins. I think it is good for the the holders of Bitcoin in that, we are getting our privacy coin. I mean, in terms of kind of the implementation of it, the mainnet testing and everything, I'm I'm not too knowledgeable about that. And to be honest, I mean, maybe that's kind of reflecting the general public's. You know, I've been trying to keep up. I've obviously heard about what happened on Bittrex and everything. But yeah, I mean, I'd say to you guys, keep the positive news coming out. You know, keep us informed.
I want to go back to Giuseppe real quick, though. It seems like you guys are getting an incredible amount of FUD. I mean, there seems to be some haters out there.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
So that is a great question. I think about this a lot, obviously. And I think there's a few factors. I think that across the board, there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how technology ventures are built, period. I think that people fail to realize that, you said it yourself, this is still a big experiment. I think with the exception of Bitcoin, everything is an experiment, and to an extent, even Bitcoin is still an experiment. Although it's by far ahead of everything else from a traction, adoption, etc. standpoint. But I think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding that goes into how these ventures are built, and you know how it's still really early in the game. And I think there's also a lack of understanding of looking at the data from a traction standpoint. You know, people automatically assume just because there's other privacy coins that are already, you know, in the top 10 market cap, that's it. It's game over. No other privacy coin can actually innovate. And that's just false. I think if you look at the history of technology companies outside of cryptocurrency, there's incumbents that come and go left and right. And I think, you know, up until, you know, about 2 years ago, there really wasn't much innovation across the board when it comes to cryptocurrency. So it's really early in the space. And I think a lot of the FUD is just due to misinformation and a lot of confirmation bias. I think there's a lot of people that like to be right. I think it's human nature. I like to be right too. But I think that, you know, that's currently taking the front on FUD. And then also too, people see that we're a real project with a real team, and it should concern some people.
I will say one other thing that I've thought about this. I think some people were confused by the Z Classic. I think they thought that they weren't expecting Z Classic to go basically down to almost nothing. That because Bprivate, I understood, was a total replacement for Z Classic. So if you bought Z Classic, you were really just buying Bprivate. And I think it's a lot of people started screaming scam because Z Classic went down to almost nothing. They didn't. It was confusing for people, but for me, it was really simple. I'm like, if you're going to get the Z Classic, you're getting the Bprivate. It's just a quick way to get a different way to get Bprivate. I think I don't know. A lot of people were unnecessarily annoyed by the price drop of Z Classic, but it should have been totally expected. So I think that might have to do with it a little bit. And I think people were frustrated with Bittrex and they started taking it out on
We lose him.
Do you care about the crypto dividends at all?
He's back.
Oh,
we lost you for a second.
We lost you there for a second.
Oh, you did? What was the last? I said, Chris, did you have any thoughts on the Bprivate situation?
Yeah, you know, I'm a marketing guy, and I look at everything from a marketing through a marketing prism. And you know, Giuseppe, you can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, as we know, this is not a Bitcoin fork. This is a Z Classic fork, and the Bitcoin moniker was placed upon it. So it's sort of as far as I know, you know, the first kind of fork that's gotten a lot of attention that's got a name that's not directly associated with where the fork came from. Bitcoin this is called Bitcoin Private to generate attention, to generate awareness, publicity for marketing purposes. I get it. I'm a marketing guy. I do think that as a community, we need to start, you know, thinking through the ramifications of these things now, because we have countless numbers of Bitcoins out there floating around. People are very confused. And, you know, I just watched a CNBC video on Twitter where they're going through, like, trying to explain, like, this is, like, not Bitcoin, but it is, and it is, this is. So, you know, and feel free, Giuseppe, like, to counter. But my take on this, just my takeaway is I want to ask the community to start having more respect for the marketing side of this. Because if you look back at Linux, it's not like we had Linux and then Linux with 2 X's and Linux 2X and Linux, you know. So it's like we had unique individual names. Now, Bitcoin's not a trademark name. It's not copyrighted. Anybody can grab it. But, you know, and what's your point of view on it, Giuseppe?
Sure. First and foremost, I respect that opinion a lot. I think you bring up a lot of fair points that I think deserve to be addressed. So my thinking is the following. So it's a fork of Z Classic merged with the UTXO set of Bitcoin, right? So that's the relationship with Bitcoin. And the reason why we think it's important and why we brought in the Bitcoin community, and that's the intent behind Bitcoin Private, is because if we want, so Bitcoin has established itself as the leader when it comes to peer-to-peer electronic cash transactions, both for individuals and enterprises, period. No other cryptocurrency has demonstrated this. Now, we believe in the mission of making all of these transactions 100% mathematically proven privacy, which today that does not happen with Bitcoin. So what we wanted to do was take this privacy technology, and if we want to implement it at mainstream, we're going to have to work with the community that currently is mainstream. And that's the way we see it and why we associated ourselves and why we want to bring this to both the Bitcoin community and the aforementioned Z Classic community, et cetera. So that's our take on it. I think that I think there's fair points against and for what I just said. I think that we do have a relationship with the Bitcoin community. I think that there's unfortunately a lot of misinformation out there on what our intentions are. And I think that creates a lot of, I think that kills the productivity to a lot of discussions there. I think that it needs to be done responsibly. You're right, because I think ultimately if people try to abuse the Bitcoin name, right? And some people call it a brand, but it's a protocol. Essentially, there's no really one owner to it. But a lot of people, if you abuse it, I think that it is going to hurt the industry. And that's not our intention at all. We're very open about what our intentions are. And we think that it's just the truth. If we want privacy, if you believe that privacy transactions should be mainstream and at critical mass scale, then you should believe that you need the Bitcoin community to be a part of that mission, or else it's just probably not going to happen. So I hope that answered a little bit, or hopefully a lot of your question.
It does. It does. And you know, just one more thought on that is you know, absolutely the community is an important part of what you're trying to do. And you say it's not a brand, but we're in a weird world right now, right? Where we're dealing with open source protocols. We're dealing with this massive community that's decentralized, but we're still dealing with brand confusion among cryptocurrencies. And, you know, look, I'm the last guy that would ever like want any sort of regulation of any sort from any government, right? But I do think we need to start thinking about how it's our job to protect the consumer. The average person who's just trying to figure out what the hell is going on here, you know, which should I buy Bitcoin or Bitcoin Private or Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum or Litecoin, you know, and we're heading in the wrong direction because we're confusing them even more, you know. So that's why I just wanted to call it out and get your thoughts on it. And it makes sense what you're saying, but at the same time, I do think we should start thinking about how we prevent in the future. If we stay on the path we're heading on, we'll easily have 100 Bitcoins in a year or two. And we might even now. I don't even know. I don't know if you guys know. But that's yeah.
That's a fair point. And I think that I think about that a lot. I really do. And I think the analogy that I try to draw is, you know, the internet, right? And a lot of companies that came with the internet. And if you look at a lot of companies that tried to do, this is a far-fetched analogy, so bear with me here. But for example, you know, a lot of the early internet service providers and, you know, people just being able to recreate that back in the 90s. The argument could be made that this is going to hurt how the internet is perceived and adopted and rolled out at a mainstream scale. And I think that ultimately there's going to be a moral compass involved with that. And there's going to be a responsibility on a developer side. Like we believe that we need to be responsible to make sure that we protect the end followers and users as much as possible. But yeah,
I think there already are 100 Bitcoins out there. I mean, that's the thing. There already are so many out there that it's kind of lost its effect, and only the cream of the crypto dividends are going to rise to the top. The ones that do have the big marketing teams, the ones that do get on the exchanges. And to be honest with you, so far only B Gold and B Cash have been able to break through on the Trezor and on the Ledger and on all the exchanges. All these other ones out there are on minor exchanges. They all have catches. And I mean, from what I see, Bprivate is, first of all, based in the United States with English-speaking people. I think it gives them a huge advantage. And I see them as the ones that have the one chance to get like the other ones, to get like B Gold and B Cash and rise to the top, because there are a lot of Chinese knockoffs out there already. And if people ask me about them, I'm like, how do I get my super BTC? I mean, I have no idea, man. It's just like, it's become a joke, some of them. So I can see both sides of the, that it's getting out of control, but all these Bitcoins, but I think they've kind of canceled each other's out, and the few that are actually legitimate are going to rise to the top. So again, it's an interesting experiment. Andrew, any thoughts? You haven't spoken for a while.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just thinking about all these. You mentioned Super BTC. I forgot all about that one though, and I was trying to think of some other ones. I'm sure I could recall a couple. But I was just thinking, how do you think it would have made a difference in terms of the release of Bitcoin Private if, all right, fair enough, you've done the airdrop to the Bitcoin holders, but under a different name? So,
I don't think it would have worked. They had to call it that. Giuseppe, I mean, you can give your opinion, but I mean, that's one of the reasons I think there's so many haters out there. I think it is a beautiful name and a very creative idea to like double fork or whatever you want to say. And they couldn't call it Z Classic. If they called it Z Classic 2, no one would have paid attention at all. It wouldn't be a story at all. I mean, what do you think, Giuseppe?
Sure. So I just want to make sure I understand the question correctly. So are you asking if we believe we could have rolled out in a different way without calling it Bitcoin Private and associating ourselves with the Bitcoin community?
I'm not saying you should have done that. I'm just saying, what do you think would have happened? How do you think that would have gone down?
Well, I don't think we'd have the team we have today. I think that a lot of people, including myself, are big believers in Bitcoin, in Bitcoin only world type of thing, right? However, I think that there's a lot of evidence that suggests over the past few months that there will never, at least I don't think there's nothing that I've seen production ready that there'll be 100% anonymous transactions on the Bitcoin chain. I don't think we'll ever get to that. There's just too much legacy. I think that right now scale is the more important solution and not 100% anonymity. So this is really the only, in my opinion, innovation outside of Bitcoin that's necessary and needed. So I think just that alone is big enough that this project wouldn't be where it is, because it would not involve the individuals such as myself to have been a part of it.
And I just want to jump in on that and just say that's pretty telling to me, because it shows that a lot of these projects are they're driven by the Bitcoin brand, but they're not associated with the Bitcoin brand. So, to me, it's like if you have McDonald's selling hamburgers and then down the street you have McDonald's Express, and they're two completely different things going on, right? And McDonald's Express is one restaurant, McDonald's has 10,000. It implies that it implies association with the original project. So, and that's why you were interested in it, right? Because there is that implied association with Bitcoin, which has a global community of developers, which has a global community of users, and Bitcoin Private has, a fraction of that right now. So I do think that we need to think about it in those terms, even though it's not companies we're talking about. It's the same thing going on in people's heads, where the average person who's new to crypto how many times were you guys asked when Bitcoin Cash came out? Like, oh, is this like a new version of Bitcoin? Oh, is this like the advanced version? Like, what is this? Like, obviously they're both Bitcoin. Like, why is one different from the other? There's just that association, and the average Joe doesn't get it.
Well, part of the problem with Bcash was they used the same addresses and they were trying to pretend to be Bitcoin. Like, these guys aren't trying to be, they're not going that extra step.
Right, I agree with that.
Where they're trying to confuse, they're using a different address system? I assume they are, at least. I'm pretty sure they are.
I mean, Bitcoin Cash was actually marketed as the Bitcoin, right? You guys are not doing any, Bitcoin Cash is not doing anything even remotely like that. It's a complementary coin,
Right. And that's why, yes. And that's why so today at a technical standpoint, Bitcoin Private has more of a throughput and is arguably, well, not arguably, it is faster than Bitcoin, but the solutions in place, it's going to be solved. Transaction speeds, costs, etc. That's not going to hold Bitcoin back. And I think any developer that understands that this stuff can't be solved overnight knows that that's just not a material issue, right? That's why. So I only like to talk about the things like the privacy aspect, which I just as a software professional and also just as a general crypto enthusiast know that that's just probably not going to be 100% implemented on the Bitcoin chain. It just isn't. There's no evidence to support that. And I just wanted to throw that in there just to show how from a mindset standpoint, we're not trying to, argue things that really aren't that.
Just for the record, I'm a huge fan of what you're doing, and I think it's much needed. So it's, I'm just commenting on the branding. I have more concern about that, but I think the project's awesome.
Very, very good. I'm glad. Hey, everybody out there, we got 170 live viewers. Pound that like button. Seriously, we're having a blast over here. Well, since we're talking about these crypto dividends, these friendly forks, and let's talk about something that's been brought up to me again here in I found myself here in South Africa. All of a sudden, a Bcash versus Bitcoin debate erupted around me on a show I was on. And I was just thinking to myself, this has just totally jumped the shark now. I mean, then on my Twitter, I got a guy, a psychopath, basically, copying me on all his thoughts and copying like 17 other people, literally 17 other people, about his conspiracy theories about Bcash and about Bitcoin Core. And how much more can we take of this? Can't people just go their separate ways? And because in the real world here, I don't see people too concerned about block size. I see people trying to sell ICOs at these events. I see people talk about Ripple and banks, and just Bcash versus Bitcoin isn't on the radar, but there still seems to be people who love to just yell at each other and debate and live vicariously through other people through these fights that they seem to just be extending. I don't see a point of so much I don't know why this discussion is even still going on, to tell you the truth. What do you guys think? Has it jumped the shark, Andrew? Have you been hearing about this again?
Yeah.
Is it annoying to you?
Yeah, I mean, you get it all the time, don't you? So, I've had about this month about 6 people asking me about buying Ripple, or Bitcoin, or Bcash, or, you get, but my response to them is always the same. It's always, there's only one chain which has run continuously for nearly 10 years, never been down, not for a second. There's only one, there's only one coin which has all this infrastructure based around it. Okay, the infrastructure around it is centralized and it's being noticed by the banks, etc., and they're trying to get in on the game. But Bitcoin itself is the only decentralized, truly decentralized crypto. There is no central point of attack. So that's my response. Whether they listen to me or not, I'm not that bothered.
Yeah, well, I think that what I try to say is, if you like Bcash, go that. I mean, there are plenty of nice people who like Bcash, and they're not trying to start fights. So I respect those people. I just think the people who want to continue the battle on both sides. I mean, because there's people on the Bitcoin side also who are guilty of just extending this thing. And I mean, I think don't people have better things to worry about than getting in, just continuing this argument? What do you guys have anything to say about this? Has the debate jumped the shark?
Yeah, I think that the whole case of tribalism, look, it's only going to get worse. I hate to tell you, Adam. It's not going away. You look at, I get the CoinMarketCap Twitter feed, and every day I see the tweet with like, we've listed 15 new coins today. And every day I look at it and I say, God damn it. It's like, it's going to keep on getting worse. between the forks and the new coin launches, everybody's got their tribe that they want to be a part of, right? And my point of view is the discussions are very important. It's very important to discuss the differences between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And with Bitcoin Cash forked, I thought, and I still think, it's a worthy experiment to have big blocks over here and small blocks with second layer solutions over here, and let's see which one wins. Let's see what happens, and that's great. Same with Bprivate, same with all these other things that are going on. The problems come when people reach their breaking point. They reach the limit of where they're able to have an intelligent argument, right? And we're dealing with the crowd on Twitter, on Reddit, on Bitcoin Talk, on all these different places, and at the conferences too, where we have such a wide range of people. We have people coming in. This is much different from the early days of Linux, where you had a geek contingent, a 90% geek contingent for a very long time. We immediately in crypto have attracted the mainstream audience, and we welcome them with open arms, but at the same time, they're going to bring with them their own drama and their own way of handling these situations. So I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon, but we can still, like those of us who are a little bit more advanced with this stuff, and I'm not a developer, but I try to stay up with stuff. I think it's up to us to sort of be the role models and try to hold intelligent conversations around these things.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. There's been a lot of not so intelligent conversations. I think that's what's getting me frustrated. And it's the same not so intelligent conversation over and over again with this now. And that's what's jumped the shark for me. Giuseppe, you had something to say, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what Chris was saying. And just an extension of that is, to answer your question directly, I just respond with, let's just see what the market says and what the market responds with. And I'm not saying from a market capitalization standpoint, I'm saying from a traction standpoint. If the developers of Bitcoin Cash believe that, transaction speeds need to be solved today, right now, and that's super important, well, let's see if that actually is, if that importance is reflected in the amount of traction that it received. That's really about it. I mean, I think that there's no other reason to argue. I think, and it's pretty clear right now that Bitcoin's still way further ahead from a traction standpoint. But I think that it's an experiment. I think Bitcoin has, I mean, to what Andrew was saying, I don't need to go on. There's unparalleled infrastructure from a cryptocurrency and project standpoint. And Bitcoin Cash's value proposition seems to be the transaction speeds, etc. And we'll see if it's really that important of an issue that it needs to be solved over the next several months, and can't wait for the second layer solutions Bitcoin has, such as Lightning Network, etc. So,
all right, but yeah, let's see how it plays out. I agree. Let it play out. I'm all for it playing out. I think
Chris has a point.
Yeah, just one more thing. I do think that it is important to keep, because I hear this a lot. I hear people saying, giving that argument, like, let the market kind of decide the merits of the technology. But going back to marketing, we are seeing, and Bitcoin Private's a really good example of this. The marketing is important, and the marketing has the potential to drive a product. I'm not saying this is Bitcoin Private, but I'm saying the marketing has the potential to drive a product that is not the best technological product ahead. Right, because it's cool to be associated with it, because people like the brand, because people like the spokesperson, and you see this over and over and over. And arguably, that's what's going on with Bitcoin still. Bitcoin is still number one because of the network effect, because of the brand, because of the associations with it. So I do think that that's part of why people feel the need to shout the loudest. People want to be the loudest advocate for their coin. But we are sort of creating that through the marketing aspect as well. So it's a double-edged sword. It's going to be crazy to see how this all plays out, because we can't go on forever with, having 10,000 coins competing with one another in the same marketplace, and, with all these different brands.
I agree. And if I can just add one more point. So I agree with that. And ultimately, though, the way I see it, and even if you just kind of look at just technology organizations in general, the marketing aspect is a Band-Aid ultimately, right? I think that it's going to, I'll use Bitcoin Private as an example. The marketing can get us so far as X, but if we do not deliver, on the product strategy front, on the adoption and traction front, no marketing in the world is going to fix those issues for us. So I think that from a short-term perspective, yes, the marketing is impactful, but from a long-term perspective, I think it cancels out just because of everything else that's going to start happening. Let's say there's an apocalypse with regard to the cryptocurrency market that we've never seen before. The ones with traction are going to be the only ones to survive. No marketing in the world is going to save them at that point. So,
well, I think a lot of people are like buying all these kind of altcoins, you know, for basically they're looking for the next Bitcoin, right? So they're looking for the next thing to shoot up, or like they're holding on to their Bcash or whatever because they're expecting it to go to 10, 20,000. But I think in the long term, when they realize that there is only one Bitcoin, then eventually they'll just have to get on board. You know, so I don't really think there's much point in wasting energy arguing. I mean, it's just let people see what happens in terms of, you know, where a coin has a function and it's fulfilling its function, then that will keep the coin alive. Nothing else will.
I think you hit the nail on the head with all the new ones that get created, all want to be the next Bitcoin. You're right.
Yeah,
So people who missed out on Bitcoin and missed out on Ethereum, or they really want to be the next Ethereum at this point, because Ethereum went through quite a rise also that's very similar to Bitcoin. Yeah. So and since they saw that happen, since they saw a coin already become the next Bitcoin, sort of, they think, well, we could be the next Ethereum then. And so their hope is in the air. So I don't know how quickly they're going to give up on their dreams and say, oh, Bitcoin is the one. It's easy to say, but I don't think it's easy to do. Of tribalism, exactly what the other guys were saying, that these people are going to stick with their tribe for as long as possible. But again, that right now, the story that hit me was just like the nonsense argument between some of these top tier altcoins and their relentless, nonstop same arguments against Bitcoin. Specifically, just the Bcash Bitcoin thing. It just seems like it has the same. The argument is overplayed now. Maybe we could have a more intelligent discussion on another level or something. And again, a lot of people have moved on. So I'm just repeating myself at this point. Anyone else have anything? Oh, yeah. Anything else to add on this? Anyone? Yes, Giuseppe.
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing, and it may sound like a broken record, but as a technology entrepreneur, you know, and outside of the crypto world and the role I play, it's just I really hope we get to a point sooner than later where all cryptocurrency are judged more by their actual traction. Because if you stop and you actually look at some of these top coins and look at the traction they have, it's the equivalent of a technology company that is at the Series A stage worth $20 million. And it's very disappointing, I think, to see that hasn't settled in yet. I think that it's good for speculators, but I think it is bad for the goal. People can say, oh, well, this is ranked X on CoinMarketCap. Well, that doesn't mean it deserves merit, right? But unfortunately, that's what fuels, I think, a lot of these arguments and conversations.
100%.
Yeah, I think there's a key to moving. There's certain gimmicks that move you up real quick on CoinMarketCap, like saying you are the China version of Ethereum, and it's the same thing that fuels FUD on the other side. It's like if you can sound exotic, like, oh, there's news out of Japan, there's news out of China, that tanks the market. It's like everybody falls for these exotic, simplistic exotic gimmicks, and it's like if you can somehow convince the 80% that you're exotic just because you use an Asian term or something, you've got it made. If you're trying to scare people or if you're trying to pump people, it seems like that's a good recipe in the cryptocurrency world.
I do wish that we could judge Bitcoin private on its own merits for the technology, but we'll never have that chance now, right? Because it's got the Bitcoin baggage and the Bitcoin brand. So just throwing that out there. Sorry, man.
No. Wait, hold on. In what case, though? I mean, I think that assumes that we're not going to be innovating on the product experience and the products that we bring to the market, and assumes that we're not going to have differentiating traction from a vendor and payment gateway adoption standpoint.
I think all that is going to happen, but I think
It
all of
may
it will
happen.
be,
It's not a
it'll be helped
guarantee.
along by the Bitcoin Association.
I mean, to a degree,
So-
if anything, it's going to be testing it slightly more because it's giving it more attention, so people will be aware of its existence. In the same way that as soon as I saw Super Bitcoin, I was on it. I wanted to know what it was, etc. But it's disappeared. You know, so I'd say just because it has the name, that alone isn't enough to keep it going.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on to our conclusion. We're in the last 10 minutes of the show here. So let's Andrew, what are any conclusionary thoughts? Anything that was left out? Anything you wanted to add, as a story or anything like that?
No, I really enjoyed the chat. Thanks, guys. One thing I did want to add, I saw a tweet of someone, I can't remember who it was. I saw it earlier today, and it was something along the lines of, you know, if the markets keep dropping as they are, and all of these ERC20 token owners, you know, like the kind of ICO people see that, or not ICO people, sorry, but like the ERC20 tokens rely on Ethereum, right? So if they all suddenly decide to cash in because, hold on a minute, we don't want to hold on to these Ether while the markets are tanking so hard, will that not really push the price of Ether like into the ground beyond, you know, beyond anything?
You know what? I don't know how much the ICO people even pay attention to the prices. They just care about issuing their ICO. So like people might start selling certain ERC20 tokens, but there's all these other people lined up to start all these ICOs just to take their place. So I don't know. I think there'll be a balance of newbies coming in to take their place. I mean, it would have to be like cryptocurrency is almost dead for these ICO people to stop creating new ERC tokens.
Too much excitement.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting thought experiment there. I hadn't really thought about that. I'd like to see that tweet actually. Okay, who's Giuseppe? What are your closing thoughts here, or things we left out? Anything?
No, I think from a higher level, I think that people need to see all of this impending regulation and, you know, in some countries shutting down exchanges with the end goal of wanting to make sure that they establish longer term frameworks as positive signals. Those are positive signs. I think that, you know, 2 years ago when it didn't have the, when cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular, because that's really the only one with critical mass adoption, didn't have the spotlight on it and didn't have the interest from a from residents of a country standpoint, well, then regulators really didn't have to care. But now, you know, for them to be taking these steps, it means that this is going to become a part of our daily lives, whether we like it or not. And that is a super positive sign. So Bitcoin's not going anywhere.
Dude, that's a nice way of putting it. That is a nice way of, you know, when people look down, I mean, I'm not a fan of regulation, but you put it in a nice way. It's going to be part of our lives, whether you like it or not now, once they got their hands around it. So that is a positive on a somewhat of what some people consider a negative. Before we go on, I want to go back to Andrew real quick, because Andrew's got his own channel, Crypto Sense. It's linked to below, and he does post lots of videos. So I want to tell if people didn't know about it, check him out. And of course, when you go to his channel, like my channel, pound that like button. Everyone take a moment to do that right now. Subscribe to this channel, subscribe to his channel, and please check out the notes section to learn all about these guys. So now Chris is going to totally wrap it up from New York City. He's going to show you New York City behind him at Manhattan again. All right, take it away.
How's it looking?
Beautiful.
Yeah, right. It's nice. Nice day here. Yeah, I just wanted to call out one thing I've been seeing a lot of, and that's fans of or holders of open source coins. And these are not for-profit ERC20 token type coins, but, you know, coins like Nano and like, you know, even Monero and some of the larger ones. People are demanding from the developers this level of marketing and partnerships. And why aren't you guys approaching like Apple and Facebook and all of this stuff? And it shows that a lot of the community still doesn't understand that these are developers who are behind these coins, especially with the smaller ones like Nano and some of these other ones that are bubbling up. And I would implore you, do not ask a small group of 10 open source developers to go out and try to also do all of these business deals. Their job is to code. You don't want to trust a business deal that's being done by one of those guys. Trust me, I know a lot of developers. No offense to you guys, but, you know, look, there's business people and there's developers, right? Look, the community, it's the community's job to do the marketing. Your job as a holder of a coin is to do the marketing and to figure out how to get the attention that it needs to get these deals done. So whether it's Nano or any of these other, I'm brain freezing on some of the other examples, but you know, don't rely on the devs to do that stuff. Get out there and do it yourself. Find a way, and if you have, you know, just figure it out, because it's not up to the core team to do that.
Chris, that was freaking awesome, man. Because I'm a marketing guy too.
Thank you.
And you know what? The communities do need to step up. If they just complain and complain and complain, nothing's going to get done. You do not want you want developers developing. That's why you've got an awesome coin. They're smart dudes. They are not marketers. You guys have, this is the free market, the free world, is the social media. Go out there and just do it. Be in motion, people. You can pump your coin if you want to. And there are people that do that all around these different cryptocurrencies. So you guys can do it too. There's nothing illegal about marketing and speaking your voice. But you don't want your developing team to be distracted, and they aren't your servants to be. You don't want them marketing. They're not.
You don't want them doing it. Let them keep their eye on the ball. Let them do what they do. Write code and keep on improving the coin. You don't want them being distracted and being pulled in 100 different directions.
That is a great conclusion. That's not for just this week in Bitcoin, but this year in cryptocurrency. People keep that in mind. Be your own marketer. Well, on that note, everyone, I am. This is This Week in Bitcoin. It comes on every Friday at some time. It's pretty random when I'm traveling all. Next week, we'll be coming to you from Uruguay. So who knows who will be on, what time it will be on. But just remember, we are here every Friday. And here on the Bitcoin Meister channel, I post a new show every single day, sometimes 2 a day. So keep on coming back. I'm Adam Meister. Thank you, guests, by the way. They rocked. Check out their links below. I'm Adam Meister, Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video. Check out the notes section below. Bye-bye, everyone. I'll see you. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.